Looking back on the week that was and forward to the week ahead. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle. Here are your hosts, Brian Drake and Dwain McFarland.
All across the fantasy universe. What is going on, everybody? It is time for the Fantasy Football Hustle, powered by our friends at Pro Football Focus. How's it going, folks? Brian Drake from FightingChanceFantasy.com, joined as always by my main man, the analytical assassin, Dwain McFarland, PFF.com. Got a feeling you're going to be hearing a little more of that as the next few weeks go on. Just, I don't know, making predictions, thinking things out loud. Wait, what's up, buddy? How are you?
Dude, I'm doing awesome. We are on the eve of vacation. So tomorrow morning, family and I were heading out for Destin. So
look at you.
It's good to be on, man. You know, we'll see. Maybe next week we can do a show from the beach or something. We'll see how things are going.
Yeah, hey, you're going to the beach. Well, you know what's going to be happening there. You're going to be popping tops. You're going to be relaxing. Be checking out the latest swimwear fashions on the beach. But we're here. It's the Fantasy Football Hustle to get you ready for draft season. We got a couple of news and notes off the top, and we're going to do our projection series. Keep on rolling. You know, we've got 3 teams tonight. We've got the Steelers, the Eagles, and the Seattle Seahawks. So 3 teams loaded, I say, with fantasy goodness. And plus, we're talking Eagles. So, this show will be 3.5 hours. So strap in and crack a beer with us. But if you're hanging out on the weekend, you're getting ready for your fantasy draft, you got to go over to PFF.com, not only to read the good stuff from Dwain and his utilization report, but check out the college football preview, check out the fantasy draft kit, use our promo code HUSTLE, save 25%. Hell, if you go over there, they got promo codes for 40% off. You know, I'm taking money out of our own pocket right now, Dwain. I'm trying to save everyone else some cash. But what can you do? So
are you saving me cash? Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, hey, we'll save us all some cash. Yeah, we could use it now. But so let's get off to a fiery start here. News broke today that Michael Thomas, the great wide receiver of the New Orleans Saints, just had ankle surgery. Now, I believe this is his second ankle surgery and could miss, due to some reports, up to 6 weeks of the season. This again after only playing 7 games last year in what for fantasy owners was a totally lost season. Now you might not see him till the end of October. The Saints, by the way, have a week 6 bye. So crushing for a guy who had a ADP of wide receiver 8 going off the board early 3rd round. Lots to unpack here, Mr. McFarland. What this does to the Saints offense, what this does to Alvin Kamara. Does this push Taysom Hill maybe into a quarterback role because he can run? What are we going to do with these receivers? Blah, 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 blah. Adam Troutman, my head's spinning. All right, let's take a breath. Initial thoughts. Michael Thomas is hurt and out for a while. Yeah,
I mean, for me, I haven't got to see where Thomas is going, in the last few drafts that have happened, how far he's falling. I didn't own a ton of him. It wasn't, we talked about him on the show last time. I thought he was going to be fine. He was going to be safe for targets. I just thought, there wasn't a big ceiling there for touchdowns. But in the 3rd round, he was fine. Well, now if I've got to take off, half, basically almost half of my regular fantasy season for an injury. And this is a guy that just, had injuries all last year. And the thing with Michael Thomas, his volume, Drake, is almost more like a running back, right? He's always working inside, short, taking hits from linebackers and safeties. He didn't just deal with cornerbacks. Like this guy, he's in there mixing it up in the middle with the big boys. And so maybe some of this volume is starting to catch up with him. I don't want to speculate. He could just end up being fine. But for me, again, it would depend on where his ADP is, but I wouldn't say he's a definite, I'm just not drafting him at all. But if somebody thinks, oh, well, now I'm still going to take him in the 4th, or I'm still going to take him in the 5th, I'm not doing that. No. There's no reason. I can take Robert Woods in the 4th and I'm still going to get more than I'm going to get, out of Michael Thomas. I get into the 5th round and I still have other options that I think I'm still going to like over Michael Thomas. And the other thing is again, we know there's quarterback questions. So for me, he's going to have to really fall. before I'm going to be willing. And to be honest, like we haven't talked about this one even before. Like I knew this had happened. I hadn't thought a lot about it other than, just what I'm giving off the top of my head right now. But like just thinking draft strategy, I don't see a way that I'm even thinking about Michael Thomas before like round 7.
That's exactly the number I had. I mean, you remember Dwain, high ankle sprain last year, played weeks 9 through 14. Then he went on IR, had a surgery in January, and now another surgery in June. Like, how can you have any confidence this guy's going to come back next year? We see it every year in fantasy, right? There's some guy who guys in your home league are going to pick and they go, oh, I'm going to stick him on my bench. And then a couple weeks in, he's going to come back and I'm going to have this superstar. And it never pans out, ever. Like we always say, I don't want receivers with foot issues. Here's a receiver with a foot issue.
Yeah. I mean, I've done this in the past with Sammy Watkins with multiple. Now, Sammy ended up having other issues, right? That probably challenged his career, but his health was obviously an issue early on and still can bother him. But I don't want to say, hey, it's never worked. I'm just thinking off the top of my head. I'm sure there's been situations where, you make that pick and it ends up working, but I don't like drafting unhealthy players, just to be honest, especially with these lower body injuries, Drake, they're pretty much, they become an avoid for me. Even in the 7th round, I mean, there's just still a lot of things I like. So it would really depend on my roster construction, my build, that sort of thing. Or if I felt like say maybe I started off with 3 running backs, maybe I grabbed a running back, a tight end, a quarterback, and I came back for whatever reason and went with 2 more backs. And then I'm like, okay, now I'm just going to throw a bunch of stuff at receiver. That's a kind of construction where I may, take a little bit of risk on Michael Thomas and say, all right, I'm about to draft 7 or 8 receivers in a row. I'm going to take Michael Thomas. I know I'm not going to get to use him early, but if my core of backs and quarterback and tight end are really good and they can carry me far enough, and then all of a sudden I get Michael Thomas back for the stretch run, then I may think, okay, that's a strategy I might be willing to think about. Because I'm going to draft enough receivers where I just basically need 2 or 3 of them every week out of the 7 or 8, right? In best ball, I don't think I'm probably touching Michael Thomas hardly at all. Like he's really going to have to fall. I'd rather deal with him where I know that if it keeps lingering or whatever and I need to move on, that I can. Or if I need to make other moves on my roster to make up for knowing he may miss extra weeks and things like that I've got that flexibility, I think it's probably tougher in best ball.
All right, so let's talk about these other guys on the team. Alvin Kamara being the main fantasy option. So people are going to say wow, Alvin Kamara is going to see 8 bazillion targets now. But again, we don't know if it's going to be Winston. We don't know if it's going to be Taysom Hill. Your initial thoughts hearing this news, how does this affect Alvin Kamara?
Well, I mean, we talked about the quarterback thing last, episode. I mean, this last couple of weeks, I've really been leaning more towards Taysom Hill. And it seems like there's some other folks that are starting to lean more that way too, on that situation. And man, here's the thing. So for Alvin Kamara, he's going to have to get volume. I think I saw something on Twitter today, like in the games Michael Thomas has missed or something like that, Alvin Kamara is like 24% target share or something crazy. It might have even been higher than that. I just briefly saw it. I haven't had a chance to dig into it. But I still worry about the Taysom Hill thing, man. He's going to have to get volume. Like they're going to have to figure out how to get him the ball. So if Michael Thomas is out early in the season, I think it's obvious that Alvin Kamara is going to get a little bit more work. But again, it doesn't totally change me. I think the Taysom Hill thing still scares me. They could just try to run the ball more. Could mean even a little bit more Latavius Murray. Sure. I think the guy that gets a chance, and he's, not that he hadn't had any, but I think it's Traquan Smith and Adam Troutman. I think those are the 2 guys that really get an opportunity. And I mean, maybe Callaway, Deontay Harris, maybe those guys become, late round picks now in best ball. Those guys both flash, in very short and sporadic stints last season. They each dealt with some injuries of their own, during the season. But there were some games where Emmanuel Sanders was out, and it was Callaway that had a game or 2 that was decent. Then later in the season, Deontay Harris showed a little bit. He's got speed. He's got that profile, right, of the punt, kick, returner, the playmaker type. That maybe he still got that ability to have, his talent unlocked at the NFL level, and maybe that's something Sean Payton's figuring out. So I like those guys as late round flyers now. Just because you can see, and that's in a deeper league. Obviously, that's if you're drafting in a league where you've got 12 teams and it's 14 rounds. I'm probably not touching either one of those guys. I'm talking like 18, 20 round and maybe a best ball situation. Those guys should now be on your radar. But Troutman and Traquan, they're the two I think that get the biggest potential opportunity out of this news.
Yeah, I'm not touching any of these Saints wide receivers because, frankly, I just don't think they're that talented. And if I'm in a managed league, I can find some more upside elsewhere. Troutman with his 10th round ADP, actually end of 10th round currently on the Football Guys Players Championship, which is also tied at premium. That's going to creep up a ton. And I think you're going to see Adam Troutman going in your managed leagues in the summer, probably 7th, 8th round, I'd say.
I mean, I already had Troutman at 46 catches for 560 yards and 4 touchdowns. So, I mean, I definitely wouldn't say that he's a do not touch. I think he could definitely be a candidate for, providing some additional upside, with Thomas out. And it's like you said, the thing is, lots of things could happen. I mean, he may not rehab well. They could be 0-5, choose to not play the guy. I mean, there's a lot of things that could happen with Michael Thomas. So I think, we'll see how much these guys, we should probably revisit this topic when we know more about it, because it's all relative. Like, how much are these ADPs going to move? And we'll have to take a look at it. And for the next show, I'll have a little bit better of a handle on, what I think these guys look like. Just so you guys know, Drake and I were texting and we're like, okay, we're going to drop this show. And I was like, okay, so we'll do it at 9:30. I'm thinking Central. And then I see Drake's tweet and it's like 8:30. And I'm like outside loading up the car. I'm like, dude, like I'm a sweaty mess. I've got to like get inside and get ready. So sorry, I don't have like that, like right off the top of my head for you guys.
And this isn't
but
the first time this has happened, by the way. Because Dwain and I live in different time zones. I live in New York. He lives in Texas. So we've had this happen before where like I come downstairs, getting ready to go. I'm like, all right, got, kiss the kids goodnight, go to bed. And I'm sitting here waiting. And I'm just waiting for Dwain to pop up in the StreamYard app. And I'm sitting there. I'm like, all right, any minute now. Maybe he's getting a drink. All right, maybe had to go to the bathroom. And I tell you, like, hey, dude, where are you? And he's like, oh, no, I'm at Central. I'm like, I live in the Eastern time zone. Everything in the world revolves around the East Coast time zone. East Coast bias, baby. Come on. Remember that.
Yeah, we've actually been pretty good, though. Like, I'm surprised we haven't had this mistake more often. So, yeah.
Let's keep it moving here, and we're going to go to Green Bay, where Pro Football Talk reported tonight that there's some Vegas sports books taking the Green Bay win total prop off the board over fears Aaron Rodgers could retire. News today also broke that Davante Adams stopped talks with the club on a long-term extension, which could make him a free agent in the offseason. None of this is really actionable in terms of fantasy. I have 0.0 faith that Aaron Rodgers is going to retire. I get that people are out there talking like, oh, he's got the same agent, David Dunn, as Carson Palmer, and he retired when he said he was going to, but Aaron Rodgers ain't doing that. All right, Aaron Rodgers is going to play. If he ain't in Denver, he's in Green Bay. If he ain't in Green Bay, he's in Denver. Let's be honest.
Yeah, it's probably just a leverage thing. But, I mean, like to me, I keep buying Aaron Rodgers and Davante Adams and Aaron Jones while this negative news cycle is out. Like, I hope this pushes them down. People start to overreact, right? Aaron Jones is already too far down, even with a potential Aaron Rodgers holdout. Davante Adams was starting to creep back up. My guess is this news will push him back down again, and I'll start taking advantage of it again because I'd started to see him go at the end of the second in some of the best balls that I had done earlier this week, whereas you could used to get him at the end of the second, or middle of the second. So I'm going to take advantage of this buying window on Adams. So here's the thing. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't play for the Packers, is it going to hurt Davante Adams? Yes. Is Davante Adams still going to be a top 6 wide receiver? Probably. Because he's just gonna get too many targets. I mean, he's one of the few guys in the league where we can say 30 to 35% of the team's passes are going to come his way. He's going to miss out on some big plays because Aaron Rodgers brings that. Aaron Rodgers work outside of the pocket on the scramble drill, all that kind of stuff. He's one of the best in the league, and that's where some of your big hits come from. It's going to hurt Marquez Valdez-Scantling more, right, than it's going to hurt Davante Adams. Davante Adams is the intermediate, works inside in the short game. Jordan Love's definitely a downgrade, but we've talked about this before on the show. I've done a study in the past of how bad does a quarterback basically have to be before he really hurts a receiver. especially a good one, they have to be terrible. Now, it's not to say you're not getting incremental advantages and upside out of Rodgers being there, but let's be honest. I mean, Aaron Rodgers isn't going to have the year he had last year. I mean, he threw a touchdown on 9% of his passes. Like, he's going to come down. Like, he had a phenomenal season that he likely can't replicate. He's had that kind of a season one time before, I believe, at that high. I'd have to go back and look again. So
that's why he was such a value last year, because he had 3 pretty pedestrian seasons in a row.
Yeah. And so he's gonna, he finally bought into the scheme. The year before he fought it. And last year he figured out, holy crap, like all this play action and all of these wide zone, everything being tied to this, and doing these different things that my coach was asking me to do last year. And I was being a prick about it. Like, he figured out that, wow, it's actually working. And well, now he's back to, just complaining and crying. And I love Aaron Rodgers. He's awesome. But I'm like, come on, man. Like, just get over yourself. Like, you play for one of the best franchises in NFL history. You had a great season last year. I know the team hadn't drafted who you wanted, but they've given you a great young coach, built a great scheme around you. This is the scheme John Elway won Super Bowls in late in his life. Did you hear him bitching and moaning and saying he wanted to trade at the end of his career? Yes, I know he did fight his way out of Indianapolis early in his career. So don't kill me, over here in the chat room. But it's just, I don't know. I don't really need to have any hot opinions about it. It's not super actionable for me right now. I'm going to keep taking Davante Adams as a wide receiver 1. I'm going to buy him on this dip. I'm not going to worry about that. I don't think he's going to hold out. He's just basically saying, look, if Aaron Rodgers ain't here, I'm not re-upping with the Packers long term. I don't care. All I care about is this season.
Right. Which is smart. You shouldn't stay there if Aaron Rodgers isn't there. Play with Jordan Love.
Well, you'll see. Jordan, who knows? Jordan Love could come out and play well. I mean, I know a lot of people hate Jordan Love, but we haven't really got to see Jordan Love yet. So, and I know a lot of people thought that was a wasted pick. I'm not an expert on watching film on quarterback, and I know that there's some people I really respect that didn't like the Jordan Love pick. So, I mean, I tend to, lean into their, expertise over mine. But, dude, I just watched Josh Allen turn in from a complete piece of shit into one of the best quarterbacks in the league. So it's like, let's see what Jordan Love can do. I'm not just going to immediately say he's going to be terrible. I mean, he can just be average and run this offense. That's the beauty of this scheme, right? Mm-hmm. We're not going to talk about the Jets tonight, but we will in the next episode. There's these teams that move to this scheme, like, you can do a lot with it with a mediocre quarterback. And so if you can just get Jordan Love to mediocre and you can balance things out and really keep the defense guessing, you can still do some really nice things as an offense. What I would love to see, Drake, is for Aaron Rodgers to hold out and Jordan Love to just destroy it like 4 games in a row. And just, and obviously if Rodgers were to come back, he'd still get his role, but just to be like, I don't know. That's what I'd like to see. And plus then maybe you just get the trade. The Packers see enough and they're like, fine, screw it. We'll send him to Denver, and then all your Denver targets get a huge bump versus what they're dealing with right now at quarterback.
In our chat room, Michael asked, what is he trying to achieve by holding out, forcing a trade or whatnot? Here's the kind of the long and the short of it is, it's because he can. If he wants to be a dick, it's July. I said this about all these guys who get crazy about people on the PUP list right now. None of this matters. The only thing that matters is September, when these guys are actually playing games. Aaron Rodgers could go to the moon with Richard Branson or Jeff Bezos or whoever right now. It doesn't matter as long as he's there when the season starts. And he's going to be there when the season starts. He's not holding out. He's not going to get docked all that money. The NFL has a rule now. It's the same reason Zach Ertz is reporting to Philadelphia, and we'll get to them later. You can't take back the fines in the new CBA like you used to. These guys could get quote-unquote fined in training camp, and they waive all the fines. You can't do that anymore. That's why all these dudes will show up. So if he doesn't like the GM and he wants to, play hardball with him, who cares? He's going to be there. You think this guy in the prime of his career is throwing away $30 million? Not a chance. But hey, what can you do? I want to play a quick game with you, Dwayne.
Sure.
Let's say he does retire games or trade. Something happens. Aaron Rodgers isn't there. Davante Adams, you say, is still an elite wide receiver. So I want to read off a few wide receivers going after him in drafts. You tell me if you would rather take Davante Adams with Jordan Love at quarterback or this player. Okay?
Yeah, let's do it.
By the way, everyone's loving your freshly shaved face today.
I know there's a lot of like 12-year-old comments. I put back, I'm 16. I mean, it's just so you guys know. But I'll turn this way, like you can see, like there's some gray over there, so that kind of balances it out.
I like it. All right, here we go. Some of these are pretty easy. So again, Davante Adams with Jordan Love. Who would you rather have? Davante Adams, DeAndre Hopkins.
DeAndre Hopkins.
Calvin Ridley.
Calvin Ridley.
DK Metcalf.
Davante Adams.
Oh, okay. Justin Jefferson.
Davante Adams.
I think we hit the floor. AJ Brown.
Davante Adams.
Okay, so it doesn't go that far.
Well, because what you just you named two other guys in front of him that are going to get about the same volume as him, but have a better quarterback. So it was a tiebreaker. If Aaron Rodgers signs, he moves back above those two guys. I'm still taking him behind Tyreek Hill. If Aaron Rodgers signs, I'm taking Davante Adams as my number 2 and Diggs as my number 3. And a PPR, half PPR standard, those would still be my orders. Standard, it gets you start to lean more into your DK Metcalfs and your Justin Jefferson and your AJ Browns, right? Because it's more just than your yards and your touchdowns. And so that will push him down a little bit, but your half point and your PPRs would be just the way we just named it.
Draft talk is without question the best part of the fantasy football season. Like right now, Dwayne, I love this time of year. I like when guys are talking draft strategy. You're just talking players. Once the season starts and you've got your teams, it's kind of like, all the fun's gone. I don't know. For some reason, I like this time of year. And what I really like about it is the draft. I love getting together with my old frat buddies. We run out a bar here on the Irish section of Syracuse. We go upstairs, we get a keg, and it's a blast. And we're doing it in person this year. And I bet a bunch of you listeners out there are going to do the same thing, but you're going to need a draft board. You got to do it right. That's where our pals at draftwithredzone.com come in. We've partnered up with these guys. We have a promo code, FF Hustle. Use that, save $5, get free shipping. You're going to get the board, the stickers. You're going to get a sign to put around your last place league member that says, like, I'm a loser at fantasy football. You're going to get cheat sheets. And most importantly, to me, if you're watching us on YouTube, and why aren't you, you're going to get this cool championship ring. And if you notice, they'll engrave it with whatever you want on there. The team name, your league name. Ours says FF Hustle Podcast. Open up the ring case. Look at this bad boy. It looks just like the Eagles Super Bowl championship ring, which, of course, was the greatest championship in the history of the NFL. All of that. This thing's heavy duty, man. All of that with our promo code FF Hustle. Draftwithredzone.com. There's a link to it in the show notes. So go check out our friends over there. I'll be using it for my draft with my buddies. Let's keep it rolling here, Dwayne, and what everyone's here for, your projections, my friend. Let's get started in the Steel City, where new OC Matt Canada takes over an offense that at one point last year was 10-0. People forget this. The Steelers were undefeated. They dropped 4 of their last 5 games and were bounced in the wild card round by the Browns, who dropped 48 on their ass. So this is a team who supported 3 top 30 PPR wide receivers, led by rookie breakout Chase Claypool, who exploded on the scene and led an offense that led the NFL in pass attempts. This offense finished 15th in passing yards, due largely to Ben's rag arm that was completely overworked coming off surgery last year. And the run game that you often associate with Pittsburgh was totally non-existent. They finished dead, butt naked last in rushing yards. Again, Pittsburgh Steelers, dead last in rushing yards, and it wasn't even close. Houston blew them out of the water, which is insane. Offensive line was battered and bruised and just bad. And they finished bottom 5 in rushing touchdowns, dead last in first downs gained rushing, and rush yards per attempt. Obviously, that led to the first-round selection of one, Najee Harris. So, let's get into it with the Steelers here. What do you think of Matt Canada? What's he going to do with this offense? And let's, I guess, start with what I finished with, and Najee Harris in the run game.
Yeah, let me hit the offense stuff, though, first, because, that's really the key to projecting this offense, and we'll jump in, to Harris. So this offense, is going to be very different than what we saw last year, but they're still gonna Ben's input, right, is still going to be huge. So I'm interested to see where this balances out. So Ben talks about how different the offense is. Matt Canada, we know like how much motion he uses, play action, sweeps. He'd rather have his quarterback under center, lots of tempo with his offense. Ben doesn't really like being under center. Ben has not been good as a play action passer in like 4 or 5 years. He had a few years where he was better as a play action than a normal drop back, but he's kind of one of those guys like still of the Manning, the Peyton Manning, even Tom Brady era where you stand back, you point at everybody and you get everything perfect. You run the play clock down to 1 second left and everything is just about, your guys winning their matchup. And the cool thing is he has the receivers that can do that. And like you mentioned last year, his arm struggled toward the second half of the season. He posted his lowest ADOT of his career of 7.4, but he still threw 33 touchdowns in 15 games, only 10 picks. I mean, people do forget, while he may not have looked great, and I know there were issues with Ben's game from a fantasy perspective, like 33 touchdowns. I mean, that is the second most that he's ever thrown in his career. He threw 34 in 16 games in 2018. Now the yardage came down 3,800 versus that season he had 5,100. So big difference in fantasy points, 353 versus 275. The 33 touchdowns. He's got the weapons to make it work. So I'm super interested to see like how this is going to work, Drake, because we've talked about Randy Fichtner right before on this podcast. Not big fans. We're not big fans.
He was Ben's boy. That's how he got the job.
Yeah, but not a fan. Didn't do anything to make the defense think about anything before the snap or to think about at the snap. So here's what my guess is. They're not going to run a ton of play action. If they do, it's going to be from the gun. But I think what we are going to see more of is we're going to see more motion. We're going to see more shifts. We're going to see more using the receivers in the running game to make those motion plays more effective and also to help their running game. Because while last year they dealt with a ton of injuries along the offensive line, this year they have a totally rebuilt offensive line, Drake. Like there's not one starter that's back.
I don't know if that's a good thing, though.
It's not. It's not a good thing. That's my point. Yeah. So they need to do everything they can to help throw the defense off balance because they're going to need to give that offensive line time to gel. It's most likely not going to be very good. They spent their first round pick, like you said, on Najee Harris, their second round pick on a tight end, and Freiermuth out of Penn State. Then they took a center in the third round, so most of their offensive line, they lost Alejandro Villanueva. They lost Pouncey, who retired. DeCastro is now injured, likely not playing for the season. So their linemen that had traditionally been their anchors, right, and then they would fill in around them, they're gone. And so it's a complete rebuild. So they need, honestly, they've got to change their scheme or Ben's going to get destroyed. Now, last year, Ben's average time to throw, Drake, was 2.17 seconds. Like that's way below the league average. The year before he had been at 2.55, 2.45, 2.48. Old school Ben, was in the 2.8s, 2.7s. He even had a year up in the 3s, 2.9. Wow. And when I say old school, I'm talking like his first 4 or 5 years in the league. He'd hold on to the ball longer, pushing it down the field with ADOTs of 10 and above. Now he's just, basically they built that offense just to try to get it out, really quick. So it's going to be, like I said, it's just really going to be interesting. So the way I'm looking at this offense right now, I see them, really trying to be a little bit more balanced, but I would see them still, they're still going to pass. I still got them at 60% drop back, 40% rushing. But last year, they were like 65-35. So I see them getting closer to like the 60-40 range, which is still high, but just trying to balance it out enough to try to, really protect Ben, do some different things, make the defense think about some different things. So it's going to be super interesting. So from, a projection standpoint, that impacts things, quite a bit. Like 5% may not seem like a lot, but it is a decent amount, whenever you're talking about 17 games. So I do believe that Najee Harris is the every down back. We've heard that confirmed through everything through the reporters. They like him in pass pro. They like him, as a receiver out of the backfield, and they love, his body type and his smash mouth, kind of style, but he can also beat you long. There's a lot of things that Harris can do. So, they're super excited about him. Now, the question is, can the offensive line be good? And here's the other thing about this scheme. the scheme, that they're installing and the ground game is now going to be for the Steelers have always ran more of a gap and a power style running game. They use a little bit of inside zone and outside zone, but not that much. They're not like the Shanahan or LaFleur or McVay schemes. They have not used that. So they are switching and they're going to more of a zone running scheme as well. And that could potentially help them because we have seen, some of these teams that use more of that wide zone type scheme be able to get away with a little bit lesser offensive linemen. But again, it's a brand new unit that's never been together before. It's like you said, I'm not sure that's a good thing. So here's the thing with Najee, the volume is going to be there. I don't see a way that he doesn't get to, 280, 300 attempts in a 17-game season. Now, you've got to project the low end. You know how I am. And if you guys haven't ever read, there's an old article I wrote on at mattwaldmanrsp.com about how I do projections, how I think about yards per carry, and like what I've researched and studied, and why you won't ever hear me get way away from these. Every once in a while, I'll have a player that I'll project at above 4.5 yards per carry or even above 4.25. Typically, I project almost everyone, mostly just based on the volume, and I'll have them right around 4 to 4.25 yards per carry because it's just not a sticky stat. And even if you start breaking it down to yards before contact and yards after contact, like that can still be problematic. It's not like that's, super sticky, either. So when I look at projecting running backs, I keep it pretty simple. And I've got Harris at 4 yards per carry, but would I be surprised if he's at 3.75? No. Would I be surprised if he's at 4.25? No. I mean, because if he does really well in yards after contact, but the yards before contact, because the offensive line are really bad, he could still only average 3.7 yards per carry. Or he could not perform as well as we think he's gonna, and the offensive line could be bad, and he could be at 3.5 yards per carry. So, I mean, there's so many things that go into it. I'm just projecting him at 4 yards right now. So I've got him at 1,200 yards on 300 carries, Drake. And I've got him right under 10 touchdowns. It's just a volume play. It wouldn't surprise me if he's more like around 8 touchdowns either. This is probably a little past the median projection. Like now that I'm sitting here, like, looking at it, talking about it. Yeah, hang on one second. Yeah, no, that would still be right under 10. So that's where I've got him right now. But the thing is, like, he's going to get targets. Now they have 3 really good pass targets already. So it's not like he's going to be like a 20%er or anything. But I mean, I've got him at 10%, of the targets. So that's 62 targets, 49 receptions, 370 yards receiving, and I've got him at 1.5 receiving touchdowns. So, I mean, I've got him at 11 touchdowns. I've got him at 15, almost 1,600 total yards. That's 275 points in a PPR. Would have been 259 in a 16-game PPR, just as a reference point. Half PPR, that's 250, and in a non-PPR, that's 225. So for me, Najee Harris, early in the offseason was going like towards the end of the second and even in the early third. And I just thought that was really too late. And now, he's more of a mid-second, and that's about where he should be. I have no problem if you want to take him with one of your first 3 or 4 picks in the second round based on the way you want to build out your roster.
It's funny. I'm just rolling through some stats here. Last year, guess who was dead last in play action passes?
Yeah.
Pittsburgh Steelers.
About him.
Yeah. Guess who was dead last, or you could say first, in drop passes? Pittsburgh Steelers. Tied with your Cowboys, by the way. So that's a good segue into the receivers. And Deontay Johnson, I love the kid. I've got him on a couple of dynasty teams. He, to me, can take over that sort of Antonio Brown role. I know it's new OC and all this stuff now, but boy, that kid is just a complete receiver. So if you got to pick one of the 3, kind of where you're going, where do you want to take these guys in drafts, depending on how you're building? Even though last year, Claypool finished first in fantasy points among all these guys.
Yeah, I think they should all be pretty close to each other, but Deontay is the guy that I like the most because he's just the guy that seems to be able to get open, at will. So, I mean, he had 25% target share in his fully healthy games. So you remove the games he missed, you remove the games where he got knocked out with an injury. He was in on 25% of the targets. Here's my one potential concern with Deontay Johnson. With this change in the scheme, what's it going to look like? Most likely it'll still mostly be 11 personnel, just like it was last year. But if they try to run more wide zone and they need to use some 12 or they need to use some 21, which one of these receivers is leaving the field? because if they want these receivers to block more, which we've been reading about, right, in OTAs and in minicamp, and Juju Smith-Schuster, he's a good blocker. Chase Claypool's a good blocker. I mean, I don't want to say he's good, but he's a bigger bodied blocker. Is Deontay Johnson potentially the guy that leaves the field when they're in 21 and 12 personnel? I do wonder that because Juju's also complaining and basically saying, hey, play me outside. So next year when I'm a free agent again, I can get paid like an outside wide receiver instead of a slot wide receiver, which is basically they're starting to become treated like running backs. Everybody's like, oh, well, you just play the slot. Anybody can do that. You're a commodity. So there could be a situation where if they try to go a little more balanced, that Deontay could be off the field. I'm not really betting on that though, Drake. And here's why. I don't see them. I don't think Ben's knees are going to be good enough to be trying to run, 21 personnel and being under center as much as Canada may want to do it. I think they're still going to end up in shotgun most of the plays. And if they're in shotgun, you can still run some 12, but 21 personnel is pretty much out in that formation. It's not like it can't ever be used, but it's not as effective. And it's not like they have two great tight ends. I guess you could say, they've got a rookie that they spent a decent pick on, and you've got Eric Ebron. So I could see 12 being really their next, I could see that being their next formation. If I was just looking at their roster talent and you weren't concerned about the quarterback breaking down, I would say you should run 10, 4 wides, and then mix it up with 12, and then you run 11 in between. But I don't really know where it's going to land. That's my one concern with Deontay Johnson. How willing is he going to be in the run game to work inside and block? Because you got to, in this run game, like receivers have to block linebackers. You're not just blocking corners. You're being asked to run, like earhole a linebacker. Deontay Johnson, I'm not sure, how willing is he going to be to do that? Whereas I think Juju and Claypool are insulated, but I will say I think Deontay has the most upside because he's the guy that when I project it and I run my range of outcomes, he's the one that I see that has the upside to be like a 25% target share. Now, the way I have him projected, I've got Deontay at 22%, I've got Juju at 18%, and I've got Claypool at 19%. So, I've got them all pretty close. But Deontay, that's 136 targets for 92 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 7 touchdowns. 81 receptions, 890 yards for Juju, and 6 touchdowns. Claypool, I've got with 73 receptions, 1,100 yards, and 7.5 touchdowns. So they're all pretty close. Deontay is at 246, Claypool at 230, and Juju at 204. Would it surprise me, Drake, if any of those numbers were flipped, though? No. So I honestly am drafting Juju the most because people just leave him there. It's like nobody wants him. You can get Juju sometimes in the 7th and 8th round.
I got him so late in the Scott Fish Bowl. I'm like, what?
Yeah, that's too late. That's a guy you can easily flex every week. He's performed every year of his career. Now, has he been a little bit of a letdown because of the trajectory we thought he might have been on 2 years ago? Yeah. But see, this is the psychology of fantasy football. People overreact, Brian. It's all of a sudden, Juju Smith-Schuster, man, he's yesterday's news, 7th round, 8th round pick, right? But we've got to draft Javonte freaking Williams in the 3rd round. Are you freaking kidding me? That's stupid. Robert Woods. Well, yeah, he's old. He's 28 and he's got Matt Stafford now and he's going to go and he goes in the 4th round because he's just not, as sexy. So it's just funny to me, the way this, but we're going to force it on Jamar Chase. Got to take him in the 5th round. You got to take Jamar Chase. I don't have to take Jamar Chase. You may feel like you've got to take Jamar Chase. Juju Smith-Schuster is probably there's a really good chance Juju scores as many points as Jamar Chase. If you just ran it based on a pure percentage, from a pure percentage standpoint. Because guess what? We've already talked about the Bengals. They're going to spread it out across 3 receivers, just like the Steelers are probably going to do. Now, you could argue with me, but Joe Burrow is younger. Yes, he is. But, Ben supported all 3 of these receivers last year. So it'll be interesting, Drake. I'm willing to draft any one of them. Deontay's the one that I will draft from the 5th round and on. Claypool, I would draft from the 6th round and on. And I'm willing, if I needed to draft Juju from the 6th round and on. I just don't really have to. I can usually get him in the 7th round.
Here, I'm going to do something fun here for our friends on YouTube. Everyone's talking about Dwain and his smooth as a baby bottom face. Let's do an extreme close-up on Dwain's face. Let's see.
Right. Oh, do I need to go off camera?
There you go. There's Dwain looking like a 12-year-old. I don't know if America's ready for this, Dwayne. Do you think they're ready for the Eagles projections with me fist pumping, ready to go in my Deshaun Watson jersey hanging in the closet? Let's try. Let's see what we can do. All right.
Why wouldn't they be ready? Do you want me to just go on mute here?
Oh, I'll talk for the next 4 hours here, folks. So let's get into it. Nick Sirianni takes over for Dougie P just a few years after Doug hoisted the Lombardi Trophy. I mean, it's so mind-blowing what happened in Philadelphia that in 2017 they won a Super Bowl and the coach and the quarterback are now gone. Wentz was shipped up packing for Indianapolis for some draft picks. This, of course, opens the door for second-year quarterback Jalen Hurts to take over this offense. So in Hurts' 4 starts last year, the Eagles were top 5 in the NFL in rushing attempts, which I think you could expect to be a theme this year, Dwayne, with a healthy offensive line. And as for the passing game, wasn't pretty. 52% completion percentage. If you're on Twitter, you know people are beating you over the head with that. But again, this is a kid who had 0 OTAs, never practiced with the first team until week 14. Backup quarterbacks don't get run during the season. They don't. It was all Wentz all the time. This kid's standing on the sideline picking his nose. The Eagles added Devonta Smith to go with Jalen Reagor. You got Dallas Goedert at tight end. And then we've got the Zach Ertz trade rumors. I still don't believe he's going to be there. But until he's gone, we have to kind of assume that he is. And then there's the Watson stuff. The Watson trade rumors on the table. Honestly, if I had to make a bet, I'm saying Deshaun Watson is the Philadelphia Eagles quarterback at some point this season. But we have to go with what we know now, and that is Jalen Hurts. So let's have a little conversation here about the Eagles. And let's start with Nick Sirianni, Shane Steichen, the OC. What do you think is going to happen with this offense?
Yeah, I mean, this is going to be more like what we've seen, with the Colts under Frank Reich. Now, Reich has shown you multiple things, right? When he had Andrew Luck, he threw the ball a lot. When he had Jacoby Brissett, it became a much more run-heavy offense. Last season with Phillip Rivers, it was a run-balanced offense, but he had also added Jonathan Taylor to the backfield. So I think what you're going to have here, especially once you account for Hurts's legs in the situation, is you're going to have more of a run-heavy to run-balanced offense like what you said. Now, game script's going to play a role, so there's going to be games where that could be blown out really early.
Could be most.
But when I think about the Eagles' offensive line, and just what you said, like, dude, they were decimated last season, and it happened before the season even started. I mean, if we think back to Brooks was out, like he got hurt like right away, right in training camp. He never even played a game. Andre Dillard missed 16 games, if I'm remembering correctly. But Brandon Brooks, I know, missed all 16. Lane Johnson missed 8. Jason Peters missed 9. The backup guard, Suamalo, like he missed games. Reagor missed 6 games. Ertz missed 5 games. Goddard missed 6 games. Miles Sanders missed 4 games. I mean, they were destroyed.
Thanks for reminding me. It was a fun year.
Yeah. So to your point, though, I mean, what do we really know about Jalen Hurts? Yeah, I don't think we know a ton. He was behind an offensive line that he was basically running for his life. His receivers were in and out of the lineup. Like you said, he didn't have any time with those players. So I think there's a chance that Jalen Hurts surprises us a little bit. Mm-hmm. I don't, looking at Jalen Hurts coming out, he's another player that a lot of the people I really respect in the industry that watch the film, and a lot of the people that look at the data and things, not big fans of Jalen Hurts, worried about his accuracy, even though it got much better, in his last year of college. There were concerns, around that. But you know what? In fantasy football, at least for him, it doesn't matter, does it, Drake? Because his legs are amazing. So
he perceived pressure that wasn't there last year, and it made him take off and run. And if you draft him, you kind of want that. Like, keep it up, kid. Just go get me 100 yards rushing and a touchdown every week.
Yeah, and the other nice little bonus you get is, with Nick Sirianni and Shane Steichen. And am I saying that right? I've never heard Shane Steichen's name pronounced.
Yep.
Is that how you say it? Look at
Steichen. Yeah.
Well, never mind. You really don't know, so we'll see. You'll figure it out though. By the time the Eagles have their first preseason game, you'll know. You'll tell me. But there's some upside as far as the number of plays, that they can run. They're typically, both those guys are at least around the league average, but they have both also shown in the past the willingness to really go up tempo. So if you look like last year at the Chargers, 69.7 plays per game, that was first in the league. Whereas, if you look at Sirianni and the Colts, he was at 13th in the league at 64.4. If you look at the year before, Steichen was at 63.4, which was league average. Sirianni was at 63.4, which was right at league average. But Steichen was at 65.8, which was fourth. So there's some opportunity, for there to be some more tempo. We could potentially see an offense that runs a lot more plays than what we saw last year. Like I already talked about kind of how they like to run the pass run. I think it is going to be more of a pass heavy to run balance type offense. Not a ton of play action, but that was really, I think, more about Phillip Rivers. Like what we just talked about with Ben. Rivers was another one of those guys that just was used to not turning his back to the defense. Could have been to do with health and legs and mobility and those sorts of things. So I think you'll see more play action now. But they were 6th in the league in the screen game, for Sirianni, 10th, for Steichen. So I think you'll see plenty of that. Shift in motion, neither one of them used a ton of that. Trick look plays to really throw defense off, not a lot of that. But both of them used a lot of no huddle. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the offense is running faster because, you could let the play clock click down to literally 0. So I think, you're going to see this run balanced offense. And when I think about Hurts, I mean, just him alone, I don't see a way, Drake, that he finishes outside the top 8 quarterbacks if he plays all season, And I don't know how to place a bet on Deshaun Watson. I feel like that's a complete unknown. I know there's news. I know there's smoke. But, I don't know how to place odds on the chance that Deshaun Watson becomes an Eagle with all the crap that's going on. There's a lot of variables, So
for sure. It's he's got to clear up that
my assumption right now is he just isn't going to play this season. And if he does play, he's going to be a Texan. I think if I had to put odds on it, that's probably where I would put him. And I don't feel good about those either. But at the same time, I think trying to project where he's going to be, where he's going to land, I don't know of any kind of mathematical kind of way. There's an art to that. I don't know what the science is, and I'm not good at the art of it. So I don't really build it too much into my projection. I don't build it at all into my projection model. I may think about it during a draft, like that day when you and I were drafting together, and we're like, if we get a chance and we want to make Watson, our third, quarterback, and we put him with a guy you can get in the 14th round like Rager, just in case it happens, that could be an interesting stack, right, to have in a best ball league if you're going to draft a bunch of teams. But when we're just talking about Hurts, man, I've got him down for 335 yards on design rushing plays. So there's 67 design rushing plays. And then I've got him down as far as, scrambles, I've got him down for 64 of those for 466 yards. That's 801 yards rushing. And I've got him down for 5 rushing touchdowns, which could easily be 7 or 8. Sure. So just on that alone, Drake, we're talking over 100 fantasy points before he's ever thrown a pass. It's really hard to not finish in the top 8 or so if you can get that many rushing yards. And again, this is assuming 17 games. So if you guys want to take my projection and you think I'm going to shave off however many games, I mean, you can take this as a baseline. I'm giving Hurts all the work, and here's why. I mean, who's behind him? Joe Flacco?
What are Nick Mullins.
Here's the only thing I would see where Hurts is not playing besides a Watson trade. And you tell me if this sounds right, Drake, because you're there. You hear it. You know more than me. Would be we're sitting at week 7. Hurts is playing bad, but the Eagles are in it because the division sucks. They're 3-4. But so is everyone else, and the rest of the team is playing really well. And they decide, you know what? We can win this division with Joe Flacco. That's really the only scenario I see where Hurts gets benched. He could come out and play good. He doesn't get benched. He could come out and play bad, and they suck, and someone else in the division is already running away with the division. I don't think Flacco plays in that scenario. I think they just say, hey, let's see if this kid grows. Let's see if he shows us something in the second half of the year, because we got to know if we got to draft a quarterback or not. And guess what? If he's really terrible, great. We'll win 2 games and we'll have a really great draft pick. So I feel like the only way, and there is a chance of this because of this division, you get around the middle of the season and nobody's running away with the thing, and the Eagles are still in it, but he has just been terrible. Then I could see him saying, okay, Flacco, here's the keys. we don't really mean give you the keys. Like, we're actually going to, here's the walker. We just want you to go out and not lose the game. We're not giving you a car. Yeah. Just so tennis balls will be on the front, and we'll make sure that you don't bump into shit. We'll try to protect you. But that would be terrible, I think, overall for the rest of the offense.
Oh, yeah.
And I say that, I mean, if Hurts was playing that terrible, I guess it wouldn't be, that bad of a thing. But that's my thought on Hurts. Like, so what's your take on the situation? What are the scenarios, besides Deshaun Watson, where Jalen Hurts gets benched for Joe Flacco?
I don't think it happens. Really, put it this way. If Hurts is horrendous and totally torpedoes all his trade value, which I also think is a reason they want to trade him now, because if there's a trade with Houston, Hurts is going to be a part of that. You don't want teams to get more film on him if he really, truly sucks, because then you can't get anything for him. Nobody's going to want him. But I don't think there's a chance that they don't play him. This team is young. There's a part of me also that thinks, hey, Jalen Hurts is a winner. He's a leader. People buy into Jalen Hurts, and this team is going to rally around him, and he's going to be a very good fantasy asset and, probably a fine regular NFL quarterback. He's got weapons now. That you can't make the excuse he doesn't have weapons. He's got Miles Sanders. He's got Dallas Goedert. He's got Devonta Smith. He's got Jalen Reagor. You even got Travis Fulgham running around out there. So you can't say he doesn't have weapons. He's got a healthy line. He should put up numbers. We're here in fantasy football about numbers, and in my mind, there's no reason he's not going to do it. I don't see him getting benched.
I bumped him. He was at 52% completion percentage last year. I bumped him to 58. And I was on the phone last night with Matt Waldman, and we were just talking about a few different offenses, just like bouncing some things off of each other. And the Eagles were one of the teams we talked about. And I asked him about Jalen Hurts. Obviously we respect Matt's opinion. And he said, well, let me pull it up. And he pulled it up, and he's like, I got him at 58%. And I was like, okay, we're good. Like, we both got him at the same thing. Matt said he definitely sees some issues there. The data with Pro Football Focus definitely shows some issues as well.
Sure.
So the film and the data are matching around accuracy, but he named some of the same things we just talked about, as far as, the situation that Hurts was in. There should be some improvement. He was in one of the worst situations you could be in. Now, his accuracy was horrendous. His big time throw to turnover worthy play ratio was terrible. His negative versus positive throws was bad. His under pressure versus kept clean didn't matter. He was bad either way. On target, he was one of the worst. On target passes was the worst. Well, one of the worst in the league. I can't technically grade him because he didn't play enough games to be graded against the top 32 quarterbacks. But so we don't officially put a number by him. But if you look at the chart, like the head of, like, barely the beak of the eagle is showing on the chart. Like, you don't even see the eyeball or the neck of the eagle. Like, it's off the chart. Third down, he was one of the worst. Accuracy as far as, ball being thrown within a catchable range of the receiver. Bad, catchable, inaccurate. He was below average. And uncatchable, meaning just receiver can't catch it, period. Even if he's LeBron James, was bad. So he was terrible in every way possible. Now, again, having said all that, he was also in a terrible situation. So I don't think he's going to come out and be a 64, 65% passer. I don't think we're going to see many cases like what we've seen with Josh Allen. Is it within the range of outcomes? Yeah, I guess we have to say that it is now, but the percentage chance is probably low. But if he just gets to, say, 58%, let's play around with this for a second, Drake. If he just gets to 58%, and let's say the Eagles, because I didn't tell everybody where I had them, I've got the Eagles right now, because people will IM me after the show. They're like, hey, you didn't say the run pass splits. So people are like really into this stuff. So I've got the Eagles at 59% passing plays versus 41% rushing plays. And for those of you new to listening to our podcast, a pass play means they drop back to pass. If you get sacked, that's wiped off the books, as far as really being an attempt, because it's not a rush and it's not a pass. But if you scramble, that goes down in the stat book as a rush. So all of a sudden, what was a drop back to pass could either be wiped off the books or now turn into a run play based on 2 out of the 3 scenarios that could occur when you drop back to pass. So when you look at their actual attempts, passes versus rush, it's 52 to 48. And that's because when you add in his scrambles and you add in the sacks, that's where it goes. And his sack rate was really high last year. And we know even though the line's going to be better, quarterbacks do partially own their sack rate. And like you even mentioned it, you talked about him feeling pressure that wasn't there. He doesn't have a real good sense for the pocket. You watch those games, you've watched every throw that, Jalen Hurts, has made. But even at 58%, and knowing that I just said, where I just put the Eagles, at 52% pass versus 48% rush on their attempts. That's still 4,072 yards, Drake, on 315 completions. I've got him at 7.5 yards per completion. I've got him at 24 touchdowns, 12 picks. That still comes out, man, Drake, that comes out to 360 fantasy points. That's a lot of fantasy points. That's a lot of fantasy points. Okay, so let's say Jalen Hurts only improves to 55% completion percentage, and let's say he only averages 7 yards passing attempt. And let's take his touchdowns down just to hang on. Let me do this real quick. I got to Control Z all this because I won't remember what I had in here. Even if I take him down to 22 touchdowns passing, drop him to 55% on his completion percentage, and take his yards per attempt down to 7, which could happen, right? I mean, Devonta Smith is still a rookie. Jalen Reagor hasn't shown us anything. Dallas Goedert's had flashes, but he hasn't shown us the eliteness that we think lives within Dallas Goedert yet. Mm-hmm. And Miles Sanders has still got some question marks too. So let's say all those things go that way and he averages 7 yards, per attempt. That's still 337 fantasy points. Let's say he's terrible at 6.5 yards per attempt passing.
By the way, that would have put him at QB 11 last year in fantasy behind Lamar Jackson.
Let's drop him to 53% completion rate. That's 326 fantasy points. So no matter what, he's going to be top 12. I think it's going to be really hard for him to not be in the top 8. I mean, that's me. And here's my thought about that. Like, he's also got upside. What if all of a sudden he's even just a little bit better than we think? What if he completes 60% of his passes and somehow he hits 7 3/4 of a yard per attempt, or 8? That's just as much within his range of outcomes, right, as being at 6.5. So you got to look at things like from both ways. So this is where I think, his median or slightly over his median is right there at almost 360 fantasy points. So Jalen Hurts, when he's there in the 9th and 10th round, I click yes. I'm voting for Jalen Hurts with my fantasy dollars. And at that point, even if Deshaun Watson signs in week 7 or something, here's the deal. Even if Deshaun Watson gets traded, there's a good chance Deshaun Watson's going to be, he's going to be facing something, and who knows? I'm not the legal expert. We could get Drew Davenport on here to fill everybody in and do a way better job at that. I'm just looking at Jalen Hurts. And right now in fantasy drafts today, I'm very willing to take him at that spot.
Let's move over to Miles Sanders. We're spending a long time on just Hurts, which, hey, we could make this an Eagles podcast all day if we wanted to. But let's talk about Miles Sanders. And Miles Sanders is a guy who came into last year. People had pretty high hopes for him. Hey, let's get Miles Sanders in the first round. Didn't play week 1, missed weeks 7 and 8. Was pretty banged up in the middle of the year. At one point in the middle of the season, Miles Sanders, and we talked about this on the show, you needed Miles Sanders to break off a 75-yard run to salvage his day, and he did, and all the points count the same. So, I mean, we're not disparaging him doing that, but he was not consistent. He looked bad, and he looked awful behind that offensive line. If the line's healthy, if we can get the screen game up to where the Chargers and the Colts are, and that's something that Doug failed to do last year. And Peterson, a lot of, I think the blame falls on him for these offensive shortcomings. I think Sanders can have a great year and be such a value as a second-round pick and help teams win leagues, especially maybe you go receiver in the first round and then, go, hey, I'll go take Tyreek Hill in the first round or DeAndre Hopkins or whatever you take, or Kelsey.
Well, here's the good news, Drake, for you. Miles Sanders is falling in the 4th round most of the time.
Oh, my God.
So here's my issue with Miles Sanders. Everything you just said is true, and I love the comments around the offensive line.
Yeah, you're right.
My bigger concern is we've got 2 coaches that are very willing to get a passing down backs back into the mix. We saw Nyheim Hines under Sirianni, and we've seen Eckler under Steichen. And I just think, based on what I saw in the data last year, so if you look at Miles Sanders, he averaged 73% of the snaps, 57% of the routes in his full games, 13% targets, 60% of the attempts. He handled 72% of the 2-minute offense. But if you look at later in the season, they started to take that away from him. So over the first 4 games, he averaged 89% of the 2-minute offense, and he averaged like almost 80% of the long down and distance. But then like down the stretch, like that got reduced. Both of those got reduced like drastically. Now he still kept getting the snaps inside the 5, still kept getting about half the attempts inside the 5. And even though the offensive line was terrible, like his efficiency metrics, were not bad. I mean, he still had 3.3 yards after contact the year before, 3.4 yards after contact, which was, versus the year before 3.3. He had a breakaway attempt percentage of 3.7%. The year before was 3.9%. That's a little low. A player like Sanders, for as explosive as he is, and he's supposed to be the home run hitter, and he is hitting some big runs. And if you think about that, that's every carry that goes over 15 yards. So he's really all or nothing. Like he's not hitting a lot of the in-between runs either. He's either just having a 1 or a 2-yard gain, or he hits you a really big one, because otherwise his breakaway attempts should be more like, given the big plays we saw from him last year, like you would expect him to be up more like in the 5%, 5.5% range for carries over 15 yards. Now, the thing that rolls in, like, so we know what these two coaches have done in the past. We saw Miles Sanders' role get reduced in that way last year under the previous coaching staff. And then this year in June in OTAs, you have the running back coach, Jamel Singleton. He comes in and he says, when the reporters were asking him, like, how are they going to use the backs? And he said, well, it all depends on your room. He says there's very specific skill sets you need in your room. First, you need a first and a second down runner. That's the guy with the really elite ability. Who's he talking about? Miles Sanders. Then you need a guy that can pass protect on third down and be short yardage. Oh, listen to this guy talking about something that, what do we talk about? Long down and distance, short down and distance. Like, dude, Singleton is speaking like my data language. Like, I love this guy, right?
It's Kerryon Johnson and Jordan.
Exactly. Could be Kerryon Johnson. That's a guy that's just, he's not going to be in as many pass routes, but he's got to protect the quarterback. And then you need that back that can run routes, and you can put him out there when you run empty. He's a mismatch against linebacker. It's really a combination. I think of the days of he's an every down back. That's a little skewed these days because of, the way the game is played now. And so a lot of things to me, when I add up all of the data points, and this is not perfect, but all we can do is go with the data points we have. Miles Sanders' role was reduced in this capacity last year. We've got two coaches that are willing to use a second back, especially, if they think it's one that's got the talent. Nyheim Hines has a special talent in that way. Austin Eckler is special in that way. So let's not get confused and think, oh, well, they're just going to do it with any back. But we'll get to that part here in a second. Then we have this coach coming out, the running back coach, and kind of confirming all of this for us. So now we've got these 3 different data points, and then they draft Kenneth Gainwell, and they already have Boston Scott. They add Kerryon Johnson. And I think what you think, if Kerryon's there, he's likely really Miles Sanders' handcuff, and he's the long down and distance back. Maybe get some of the short down and distance too. We'll see. I think Gainwell or Boston Scott is the 2-minute back. And so I think what this leaves Miles Sanders in is a first and second down back and a closing out the game back, which, if the offense is running well, could be okay for where you're getting him in the 4th or 5th round, right? We've already talked about Josh Jacobs. I think Miles Sanders is in a similar situation to Josh Jacobs. So the way I look at Miles Sanders is I would still be willing to take him over Josh Jacobs in the 4th round. And here's why, because I still think there's a chance, Drake, that he could be the every down back.
Right. He can fill
Josh Jacobs, we know they're not going to let him be. Josh Jacobs could be. Josh Jacobs, I'll just tell you this right now, he's a far better player than Miles Sanders. Josh Jacobs is a better running back than Miles Sanders is not, probably not close. He could be fine as a receiving back, but that doesn't matter. His coach doesn't care. His coach has said, no, you're not going to be that. And we've known that for 2 years now. We've steered people away from Josh Jacobs last year. Miles Sanders does still have a chance. So even despite the 4 things that I just laid out, there is a chance he's the every down back, right? Because when they originally drafted him, they did think of him as an every down back. So that's what you're placing your chip on. I'm not drafting Miles Sanders in the second round. I'm willing. I'll take some swings on Sanders in the late third. If depending on roster construction, but I feel pretty good about him, in the 4th round. I'm drafting Miles Sanders over Javonte Williams. I'll promise you that. Like, there's no way I'm taking Javonte Williams over Miles Sanders. So that's my spiel on Sanders, Drake. So right now I've got him at 52.5% of the carries. That's 268. I've got him at 1,140 yards, 8 rushing touchdowns, 33 receptions on 43 targets, 260 yards receiving, and 2 receiving touchdowns. So that's 232 fantasy points in a PPR, 216.5 and 199 in a non-PPR standard league. Is anybody playing in those anymore?
I think so. Give me that PPR number again. I want to see where he would have came out last year.
You can't really grade it again. You can't really grade it against last year because last year he would have been 218 in a 16-game season. That's the number you got to look at. Okay,
so 218 would have made him RB10. That's what Kareem Hunt did last year. You're telling me Miles Sanders can't be Kareem Hunt? No, the actual lead back on a team? He's got to stay healthy. Got to have that line healthy. Let's go over to the wide receivers and tight end, because I know people are going to jump off a bridge here. We're talking so long about the Eagles. I really like Devonta Smith. I think he's going to be the lead wide receiver on this team. I think people are sleeping on Jalen Reagor. He could have a good year. People forget he was a first-round pick. And let's also not forget about one Travis Fulgham. If you're in a deep bench league, right, and you need a late-round flyer, let's not forget the Eagles, and I believe this wholeheartedly, will likely get rid of Zach Ertz. That means you're not going to see as much 12 personnel. That means you're going to have 3 receivers on the field in 11. One of those 3 is going to be Travis Fulgham because they need an X receiver, somebody with some size. All 3 of those guys can play any position. But if he's going to play the boundary X, he's got size. And remember last year for about a 4-week stretch, he led the NFL in receiving. So I just put it in the back of your head, maybe Travis Fulgham on the last pick in your draft. And if the Eagles have to throw a ton, he could be something. But what do you got on the Birds wideouts?
Yeah, I have this as a pretty balanced attack. So I've got 21% of the targets to Devonta Smith. He is a guy that, and that's a decent number for a rookie. I have him and T. Higgins pretty close. I think Devonta Smith is a guy I'm drafting though, because I have not T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. So I can draft, Devonta Smith, after where Jamar Chase is going. So I like the price on Devonta Smith. So I've got him at 21% of the targets. It's 114, 66 receptions. So the catch rates get hurt, right? Because of Jalen Hurts. So the catch rates get knocked down versus what you would see with Burrow, with Chase. But still, I've got him at 66 receptions, 850 yards receiving, Drake. And that's 6 receiving touchdowns, 187 in a PPR, 155.5, 122 in a non. I have the second target on the team being Dallas Goedert at 18% of the targets. His catch rate will be higher, working a little bit closer to the line of scrimmage, but they do use him down the seam. He does take some big hits on throws over the middle. He also takes some big hits hanging out in bars in San Diego.
Low blow.
98 targets, 66 receptions, 11 yards per catch, 726 yards receiving, 6 receiving touchdowns. That's 208 in the tight end premium, so that's 1.5 points per reception. 190 I lost my spot. 175 in a PPR, 142.5 and 109 in a non. And then I have Jalen Reagor, the guy, to your point, I think everyone is sleeping on, right at 17.5% of the targets. That's 55 receptions, 670 yards, 5.5 touchdowns. Jalen Reagor is my most owned player in best ball right now. And for a simple reason, what you just said, he's a first-round pick last year and people have already forgotten. I agree with you on Travis Fulgham. He could be part of the offense. I think you're going to see 11 personnel is going to be the number one thing they use as far as personnel grouping, which is 3 wide receivers. So I think you're going to see all of them on the field plenty. I still think there's a chance that Jalen Reagor is on the field in 12 personnel and Fulgham leaves the field. I think there's a chance that it's Reagor kicking inside to the slot when they go to 11. that's something TBD. We'll be looking to you for your training camp reporting skills on that one.
They say that with these three guys, and really how Sirianni runs it is they don't necessarily say X, Y, and Z. They have receivers that can just play anywhere in space, and they're not going to pigeonhole them into one spot. So, but again,
they say that, they
got to line up somewhere.
Right. Yeah, they say that, but there are certain people that leave the field, like when they go to 12 or when they go to 21. But to your point, like Sirianni, has rotated guys. It's not like what you see with the Ravens, but there's a decent rotation. I mean, if you look at his offenses over the last few years now, last 2 years, so last 3 years, 21%, is the leading target share. And I gave that to Devonta Smith. And that's because I also think that Devonta Smith's, really he's a good receiver. So
there's no one to rotate. Everyone else sucks.
Yeah. So, I mean, I got it pretty evenly spread out though. I mean, Jalen Reagor, man, you can get him in the 14th round of your fantasy draft.
Steal.
So, I mean, I'm going to take him. And at that point, it's an easy cut if he sucks, I mean, great. 2 weeks in, you don't like him, whatever you got to deal with on your team, you cut Jalen Reagor. But I like owning, guys that were a first round pick the year before that dealt with some injuries. We don't know. Jalen Reagor could be really good.
Yeah. I think
it's within the range of outcomes that he leads the team in targets. It could happen.
Sure.
So
absolutely. Let's move along here and go to Seattle, where last year the Seahawks promised to let Russ cook. For a minute, they kind of did. Through week 5, Seattle was top 5 in passing yards and led the NFL in passing touchdowns. They finished the year 13th in passing yards, 18th in attempts. Now, this is a team, as we know, that wants to run the ball. They have a new offensive coordinator because Pete Carroll just wants to pound that rock, but we'll see what happens there. Russ Wilson is #good. Last year, the 7th highest NFL passer rating, and is just a damn good player surrounded by other damn good players. So let's hear, Dwain, about this new offensive coordinator, Mr. Waldron, and what you think is going to happen here with DK, with Lockett. We've got Gerald Everett up there. They have Chris Carson back healthy. Dwayne Eskridge gets drafted maybe to play in the slot a little bit. So a lot of exciting big fantasy pieces in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, man, this is – I know we take time anyway, but we're only hitting 3 teams tonight. We're already over an hour. But
it's insane. We were like, oh, this is going to be a 45-minute show.
But we knew this. That I told you in the text, they all changed coordinators. When that happens, look, this is what our show does. We go deep into some of the stuff around the coordinator changes.
Pack a lunch.
What we think, how it's going to impact the team. I'm so stoked about this. And I think people are misreading, right? What they see is, when you look at Schottenheimer and you look at Pete Carroll, and they're like, they had philosophical differences. And they did. But people think that immediately means, well, okay, here we go, back to just, pounding the run game. And I kind of thought the same thing, Drake, until I really dug into this. Mm-hmm. And as I started to look at it, Shane Waldron is really, here, number 2, philosophical differences could also be the way that you're designing your the majority of your plays, right? So the Seahawks started off red hot. Then teams started leaving 2 safeties deep on them all the time, and they didn't adapt. They didn't really change their game. And you heard Tyler Lockett talk about it. You heard DK Metcalf, and they all liked Schottenheimer, a guy that we all thought at one point could just, never get out of his own way and throw the football. Apparently all offensive coordinators really do want to pass the football. They just get stuck under defensive coordinator head coaches like Pete Carroll. But when I look at it, they probably won't be, pass heavy. But I think what you're going to see is, one, the pace is going to be faster because Shane Waldron comes from where? The Rams. And if you look at the Rams and what they've done, over the last few years, so last year, 68 plays a game under McVay. It was 63.1 last year under Schottenheimer. The year before under McVay, 66 plays per game. And that's excluding overtime. That's just in normal 4 quarters of play. So you're going to see an offense that's going to run more plays. And that's what when you read the quotes and you really dig in, that's what Russ Wilson is so excited about. So guess what this also does? If you had to name, Drake, you're playing Madden, you sit down and you're going to pick your playbook and it's the Rams. What's it going to be described as? Is it going to be run heavy, run balance, pass heavy? What is it?
I'm going to say if I'm the Rams run a ton, especially in the red zone. But I think it's going to be a little – I'm going to say it skews more pass heavy.
Yeah, it's going to be a run balance offense. But here's the deal. So what that is going to mean, it's going to be around 55-45 passing attempts to rushing attempts. So when I look at it from a drop back standpoint, 59% to 41. So a drop back to pass 59% of the time. Again, some of those turn into sacks, some of those turn into scrambles. When you break it down though and say, okay, just actual attempts, 53% and 47 is where I have them. But so people, you're like, oh man, that sucks. That's really going to hurt DK Metcalf. That's really going to hurt Tyler Lockett. But when you get the pace to go as much faster as it's probably going to go, which is what Russ Wilson's so excited about, and now you have an offense that is going to give Russ looks off of play action, lots of motion, lots of shifting, all the easy things that Russ hasn't always had at his disposal that these other coordinators are using to make lesser quarterbacks look good. And Stafford's going to get the same thing. We talked about this with the Rams. Russ and Stafford are going to get more of that. Now, Russ used to get a lot of that early on in his career, way back in the day with Darrell Bevell. And then, or was that Greg? No, was it Bevell or Roman? Yeah, it was. I think it was Bevell. It was Bevell back then. But that all went away. But now he's going to get those things back. There's going to be a lot more play action. So I think Russ's efficiency has a chance to stay like hyper on fire. They're not just going to be able to sit back and two deep looks. There's going to be a lot of layers to the field. There's going to be a balance with the running game. So Pete Carroll's going to be happy because it's going to be, a run balance offense. But Russ and the receivers are all going to be happy because the pace is going to be so high. Their catches are not going to go down from last year. So it's a perfect fit for everybody. Like the more I studied this and the more that I looked at it, like I was like, wow, like this really is like perfect for what they want to do. It's going to be that philosophical match. And so you're going to have Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson most likely happy if Shane Waldron can pull off, what it is that he wants to do. This offensive line looks pretty good, Drake. This is an offensive line that, we've seen in the past be pretty terrible. You got Dwain Brown at left tackle, graded 5th out of 79 tackles by Pro Football Focus. Damian Lewis at center, 13 out of 80. He was a rookie last year. You get Gabe Jackson at right guard, right tackle, Brandon Shell. He's more of a run blocker than a pass blocker, but he's okay. I mean, compared to some of the same things we've seen Russ behind historically, like that feels good. Russell Wilson's being drafted too late. He should be getting drafted up closer to Kyler, up closer to Josh Allen. He's for sure going too late. I've got him at 380 fantasy points in 17 games. I've got him at 4,600 yards passing, 37 touchdowns.
Wow.
I won't go into everything else. I got him at 440 yards rushing total. That's his scrambles and his design runs added together. I've only got him at 2 rushing touchdowns because he doesn't get a ton of those. He's only had I think 1 design rushing touchdown from inside the 5. Well,
we know he's going to scramble. I mean, he was tied with Lamar Jackson. I believe the stat was for second most scrambles in the league.
And then you add, that they do add Eskridge, and I know a lot of people. There's a lot of jokes about how old he is, but it's another field stretcher. And so think about the Rams' offense. Lockett's going to work inside. He's going to work underneath and deep. Then you've got Eskridge who could stretch things out, like you said. He can also play inside. We know what DK Metcalf is. And you add who? Gerald Everett from where? The Rams.
I love Gerald Everett this year.
Yeah, and I love Chris Carson this year. Like this offense is I think Russell Wilson and Eskridge, Gerald Everett, and Chris Carson are and Lockett are all underpriced. I think Metcalf's priced in. Like you're paying a late second or an early third to get Metcalf. So it's priced in. Tyler Lockett, man. In the 4th round, he and Robert Woods are money all day long in the 4th round in a PPR, half PPR league. Like those are just auto picks. I mean, these guys they're so safe and they still give you upside. They give you a floor. They can give you the big games you need. I know people that, how people do, right? Well, if you take away these 3 games from Tyler, this is going to be a completely different offense. I know Tyler Lockett was not dependable on a week-to-week basis last year, but he was still a great receiver. They just re-upped him. He's getting plenty of money. He's got Metcalf on the other side, and he gets the friendly matchups in the slot. I do expect his yards per catch to come down some because I think he'll work underneath a little bit more. because they're going to take advantage early in the season. If these teams are going to stay in these too high looks, that's the Cooper Kupp game, and they'll let Lockett work underneath. So right now I've got, just to hit those receivers really quick, I've got DK Metcalf at 137 targets, 89 receptions, 1,339 yards, and 10 receiving touchdowns. That's 287 points. I've got Tyler Lockett at 132 targets, 96 receptions, and 1,105 yards, and 9 receiving touchdowns. That's 265 points. So you're getting Tyler Lockett a round and a half to 2 rounds later than DK Metcalf, and I got him 20 points apart. So now I agree that Metcalf's ceiling is big, but people act like Lockett doesn't have a ceiling. He does. If Russ goes off and this offense is really cooking, and if all of a sudden they get behind more, which is likely, with their defense, like early in games, we could see more passing than what I've given them, Drake. They could end up more like a 55-45, a 56-44. If you change those things, these two guys both, they just continually, start to move up. So Russ Wilson being drafted way too late. Dwayne Eskridge should be being taken late in best balls. I've got him at 12% of the targets. I've got him at 640 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then I've got Gerald Everett at 80 targets, 60 receptions, 600 yards, 5 touchdowns. Like this, these guys are all underpriced after Metcalf. Chris Carson, 58.5% of the team attempts. I've only got him at 9% of the targets, just because I think they will work in DJ Dallas, Travis Homer. If Rashad Penny gets healthy, I think they're going to work those guys in on the passing game. That did happen to last year with Carson. When I went back and really looked at it, I was expecting to see, for whatever reason, I don't know why I looked at the data all last year, but for whatever reason in my mind, I had it that he was really getting to be an every down back. Now, he does have a new coordinator, so that could change things, but I think they want to give him a little bit of a rest. So whenever I went back and looked, he had 59% of the attempts in healthy games, but he wasn't on the field for the 2-minute or 4-minute offense. He just was not used. He still averaged, though, 47% routes per drop back in a game, so right around 50%. And at the end of the season, at the very last game, they did use him in long down and distance at 83%. But Hyde took a lot of that. Travis Homer, DJ Dallas, they all took the 2-minute and long down distant work. They were pretty much trying to mix those guys in more. Now, despite all that, Carson did still average 13% of targets in his healthy games. So 69% of the snaps inside the 5 when healthy, 58% of the attempts inside the 5 when healthy. He's a yard, after the catch, kind of yards after the contact, kind of back, 3.2, 3.6, 3.4 over the last 3 years. His breakaway attempts are solid. They're better than Miles Sanders, 4.3%, 5%, 6.9%. So touchdowns, are not going to be an issue in this offense. It's going to be moving, and he's going to get plenty of looks down inside the 5. So Chris Carson, man, all day long in the 4th round. And I like Chris Carson in the 3rd round. He is a violent runner. There is a chance for injury. That's the thing you're going to have to deal with Chris Carson. So if you decide that Chris Carson is not for you because of that, I'm not going to fault you. But if he does play 16 games or he plays 14 games, it's going to be really good. This offense is overall underrated, like I said, behind DK Metcalf, and I'm ecstatic about what I think this offense could do.
Yeah, Chris Carson's an interesting guy. There's a lot of folks who are weighing in on him. Some people who won't touch him. He missed weeks 8 through 11 last year. And then really, if you want to look at his rushing, he only had 3 games over 70 yards rushing. I want to see a little more in the passing game from him because he's a good receiver. I've had him on some teams in years past. Very capable out of the backfield. Could add a lot in a PPR league. So hopefully with this new offense, if he can get some of that role, boy, then we're really cooking because he's got hands. He's not some Ironhead Hayward, the run your head into a brick wall kind of guy. So let's see. Anything else we got to touch on with the Seahawks?
No, man. Draft them.
There you go.
And I own a little bit less of Metcalf, not because I don't like him, just because I mix him up with some of the other receivers that go in that range, like Jefferson and AJ Brown. I like mixing those other guys in because I like them too. They all have some big upside for efficiency seasons, but man, Carson, Lockett, going too late. And then, the darts that you can throw at Gerald Everett, the darts that you can throw at Eskridge, it's just they're going too late, man.
Yeah.
So, and Russell Wilson's going too late too. Like the Russell Wilson is probably, that's the biggest one. Like he is really being taken too late.
Yeah, he's going too late, and Dwayne's going to the beach. That's what
right.
we're up to in the next week here. So, folks, head over to pff.com, sign up, get the fantasy football draft preview. Use our promo code HUSTLE. If you need the draft board for your home league with your pals, draftwithredzone.com. Our promo code there is slightly different. It's FF Hustle. So use that. Of course, go over to Viridian Global. The pin tweet at FF Hustle on Twitter is Viridian Global, and you can get a Fantasy Football Hustle t-shirt, hoodie, zip up, whatever you want. Look cool at your draft, supporting the cause. We appreciate you guys listening. Thank you so much for hanging out. Dwayne, go get drunk on a beach. You deserve it, my friend, because when you come back, we're never going to stop hustling. Take it easy, guys.